So I grew up on the Lower East Side of New York City, where culture, flavors, and chaos threw a party. You would walk one block and you would smell bagels and bialys from the Jewish deli. Next block, you would smell espresso and marinara from Little Italy. And in the middle of it all was my Chinatown. Hanging ducks in the windows, fish in tanks. That's where I found love with food, flavor, and freshness. That was the community that raised me. My parents, Yam and Eva, came here with engineering degrees, but no one would hire them. So, like most immigrants, they started all over. And eventually, they were chopping vegetables and sweeping floors and working harder than anybody else in the room. They started their own restaurant, a tiny Chinese restaurant in Clifton, New Jersey. That place became everything to us. It was the business, it was the family, it was my after-school program. But instead of soccer practice, I was answering phones, folding dumplings, doing math homework next to the box of Fortune cookies. But what I remember so vividly was my dad's ginger scallion sauce. Bright, bold topping that he served with pan-fried dumplings. Nothing fancy whatsoever, but it was magic. Customers begged to take it home. And I would say to him, "Dad, I think you should shut the restaurants down and just sell sauce." He looked at me and said, "Ruby, head down, stop talking, work harder." And that was just the rule in the house. Don't dream, just hustle. My dad died young at the age of 52. And after finishing up my MBA at Bentley, the restaurant had been sold. I swore I would never, ever do what my parents did. I wanted a corporate office job, I wanted a desk, and I definitely did not want to smell like beef and broccoli. I traded in dumplings for deadlines, and for 25 years, I worked in marketing, managing campaigns, leading teams, checking off all the right boxes. But with 4 kids, tuition, expectations stacked high, it was hard. I was burnt out on all ends. I would come home, and most nights, I would feel like I was on a real episode of Chopped, where the mystery ingredient was whatever's in the fridge and how much time before someone cries. But one night, I came home, totally wiped, and I just threw together what I knew. Ginger, scallion, a little bit of oil, and poured it on top of chicken. We sat down, and for once, it was quiet. No one was crying, asking what was for dessert. Then my daughter, Kayla, looked up and said, "Mom, you should bottle this." I froze. All of a sudden, I was no longer in my kitchen anymore. I was back at the restaurant, hearing my own voice from all those years ago. I knew what I had to do then. So I quit my job, no business plan, no investors, just my stove, my sauce, and a little girl who knew it was special. I started from scratch, pitching it 1 jar at a time to whoever would take a sample or just feel too guilty to say no to me. Then, my first lifeline. I found an incubator kitchen in Boston. I finally had the right tools, guidance, and a community. Immigrant mothers, women, all turning their stories into something you can taste. They looked at me, about to pour 400 degrees oil on top of ginger and scallion, and said, Okay, love the flavor, but if you keep doing that, we're calling the fire department. They helped me scale and believe that I had a shot. But it was still hard, still really messy. Like my first big retail moment. I had packed the car with care, drove to Needham like I was headed to the Oscars. But my jars failed me. The lids busted open, and there was sauce everywhere. The seats, the seams, my soul. I pulled the car over, took a moment, cleaned up the mess, and just kept going. Because giving up just wasn't an option. But the worst critic of them all, my mother. She would look me in the eye and say, okay, Ruby, I did not come to this country to work my fingers raw, to raise you, to get an education, just to watch you sweep floors. I get it. She was totally traumatized by the restaurants, the stress, the struggle, and she didn't want me to go back to work she worked so hard to leave. I was scared too, but what Kayla had sparked in me was stronger than fear. So at that point, I just knew that this was no longer a hustle, it was a calling. And now, every time I make that sauce, I feel connected to my dad, who never had a chance to see this dream come true, to my daughter, who reminded me of who I am, and to that little New Jersey kitchen where it all began. Thank you.